Welcome to Lesson 5 of Module 4, Ecosystem Dynamics. In this video, we're going to be looking at evidence for past changes, and we're going to be focusing on present-day organisms. And when we look at present-day organisms, we're going to focus on small mammals and sclerophyll plants, and then we're going to evaluate some of the claims and conclusions that people have got to about how these may have evolved into the present-day organisms from some past organisms that were living and looking at the evidence for that. So just some words that we need to understand for this video. We have extinct, which is no living members left, extent, which means still in existence or living, and then when we refer to the supercontinent, we're talking about each of the several large land masses, notably Pangaea, Gondwana, and Laurasia, thought to have divided to form the present continents in the geological past. So Gondwana was the supercontinent in which we saw lots of changes happening, but this was the landmass that Australia broke from approximately 99 million years ago. And this is where we start to see Australia become the dry continent that it is today. The sclerophyll plants and the small mammals that I mentioned earlier do in fact provide evidence for historic climate change within Australia. And we know this because there are still some surviving pockets of tropical rainforest, but also some of the drier habitats that we do see within Australia. So sclerophyll plants are well adapted to harsh, dry climates and nutrient-deficient soils, which, funnily enough, is exactly what Australia has become. They have hard, tough leaves, and some of them contain toxins or indigestible chemicals, and this makes them unpalatable to herbivores, so therefore they are not a good source of food. Sclerophyll plants do include the 800 species of eucalyptus and about 900 species of acacia, and these are the dominant shrubs and trees found throughout the forests and savannas and the scrubland of present-day Australia. The way that these are spread and the speciation of these has in fact coincided with an increase in charcoal deposits within the fossil record, and that occurred about 20 million years ago. And as the climate became hotter and drier, these plants took advantage of the niches that the rainforest species could no longer survive within. When we look and focus on small mammals and kangaroos, we see how their spread may have changed due to the climate becoming hotter and drier. And this has some connection to the plant species, but also some of the organisms that did in fact live in the trees that were in the rainforest actually could no longer live in those trees because the pockets of rainforest diminished. So these refer to our small arboreal mammals, and arboreal is the word we use for tree dwelling. And with changes in these pockets of rainforest, we saw the larger ground-dwelling animals dominate. And for example, the kangaroo diversified from arboreal rainforest species to those in open woodlands and grasslands. The kangaroo ancestors we see within the fossil record adapted to moving on just two legs, and their teeth adapted to grazing on grass and tough sclerophyll plants. Their closest living relative is the marsupial, and this is for example, the musky rat kangaroo, which is well adapted to life in the dense forest. So there are a few presentations of information that allow us to work out how we have led to the present day organisms we see and where they may have come from. So when we talk about plants, the distribution and abundance of present day plants can be explained as having three main origins. The first are those that were already on the continent when it split from Gondwana. The second is that those that dispersed from Southeast Asia to Australia. And the third are the introduced species that we do see. When we look at animals, there are the original residents, and these were on the supercontinent when it split from Gondwana. So, for example, within Australia, we had frogs, reptiles, monotremes, and marsupials. There are also Asian immigrants that arrived when sea levels were low, and this was between 15 million years ago, and then it happened again about 40,000 to 30,000 years ago. There were those animals that were introduced by immigrant traders or late arrival Aboriginals, appeared to occur about 4,000 years ago, and are those that were introduced by European immigrants beginning 200 years ago. That aims to explain how we see some of the organisms that we do see in our present day and how they may have changed from the past. Remember to attend class so we can apply this information and looking at some of the actual evidence. Thanks for tuning in for lesson 5. Make sure you tune in for lesson 6.